Good morning, guys. So today is the day where we are pruning our fruit trees. We have been waiting on this project just because it's been raining and stuff like that, and we didn't want to prune them on a day where they would essentially just get wet right after and cause issues. But we're getting to the point where the trees are starting to bud a little bit and they're starting to look a little green, so we're gonna be getting leaves and flowers soon. So we need to just get this out of the way and hope for the best. So Andrew's actually going to be doing all of the pruning today, and I'm just going to walk you through kind of what we're doing. This is based off of what research we've done and what we think is just best for our trees. This is not in any kind of way the one way to do it. This is just how we're doing it, but I figured I'd bring you along so that if you have fruit trees that you need to prune, you can look at this as kind of a guide. Oh, and if you're new here, my name is Kira. Feel free to call me Q, and welcome to our garden. So the first thing that needs to happen, no matter what you're pruning, it could be fruit trees, it could be bushes, anything else in your garden, is you want to make sure that your tools are ready for the job. You want to make sure that your tools are sharp and they are clean. So this is really important, especially for fruit trees, because what this does is it minimizes damage and disease. So making sure that your tools are sharp minimizes the damage that you're going to do to the tree or whatever it is you're pruning, and making sure that they're clean minimizes the spread of disease, which is really important, especially for fruit trees. It would be awful to lose an entire beautiful mature tree just because you skipped on cleaning your tools. So the reason why you want your tools sharp is, when you are pruning trees, you are causing damage to the tree. You are, you're cutting it, you're cutting parts of it off. And what sharp tools do is it makes sure that you are minimizing the amount of damage as much as possible. Dull tools will actually crush the tree. Sometimes you have to go at it, hack at it multiple times. This is causing way more damage to your tree than a clean cut would. And then the other important part about this job is the cleaning. And so we just use rubbing alcohol to clean all of our tools. You could use a bunch of different things. Anything that's really gonna disinfect, get a spray bottle, you can do whatever you want. But it is really important to make sure that your tools are clean before you start, and then clean them again in between each plant so that you're not spreading any disease from one plant to another. So when it comes down to actually pruning the fruit trees, we do have kind of a mental checklist that we work from, and I'll share that with you. But first things first that we needed to do with these trees is we needed to prune the parts of the tree that went over our fence. So our neighbor, we noticed, had cut certain limbs off of the tree that were, in his way on his side of the fence and all of that. And so what we wanted to do first before we did anything else, any other kind of shaping or anything, was we wanted to get those branches taken care of. This is really important for us to do because we want to be able to have a healthy tree and be good neighbors at the same time. And so we saw all of the branches that our neighbor had cut pretty much at the fence line where they were in his way. And we took those branches and followed them back to whatever the bigger branch was or the trunk of the tree was. And then we made a clean cut right at that junction. And so this way the tree would be healthier, it'd be less lopsided, and those branches wouldn't grow back and then again be in our neighbor's way once, they started having new growth on them. They would be out of his way for good. It is really important for us as we are growing this garden to share with our neighbors, but also just be good neighbors. And if we see something that, is clearly in our neighbor's way or, causing any kind of potential nuisance for them, we like to get that taken care of. So once that's done, then we kind of work off of our checklist, if you will. And these don't have to be done in any kind of order, but these are just the things that we look for when it comes to pruning our trees. So the first thing is looking for anything that is dead or any branches that are broken. Now the dead branches are pretty obvious on these trees because they are starting to put off new growth and new shoots. But, if we had pruned these earlier, basically all the branches look the same because the trees are dormant. And so what you're looking for is when you bend any of the branches, do they bend, are they pliable, or do they break? And anything that just breaks, that's a dead branch and you can get rid of it. Now the other thing we look for is branches that were already broken. And so what we do is we just follow that back to the nearest junction and then we make a clean cut there. Then the next thing that we do is we go around and we look for all the little stuff that we don't want growing on the tree. So that could be like little sprouts that are coming off of the trunk. It could be small branches coming off the trunk or off of the rootstock. Any branches that are growing directly out of the ground around the trunk, we trim all of those off, because those are all things that you don't want, especially if it's something growing on the very bottom of the trunk, because that's essentially trying to grow a whole nother tree and you really don't want that. So we got rid of all of that stuff. Then the next part is shaping. So when it comes to different kinds of trees, you want to shape them a little bit differently. So for our stone fruit, we like to kind of go for what looks like kind of a goblet shape. If you imagine having, your palm facing upright and holding a baseball in your hand, how all of your fingers are kind of like spread out around it, there's nothing in the middle. That's what we really try to do when it comes to our stone fruit. And then for our apple trees, we want a center leader and then we want smaller branches to kind of come off of that. And so this is different kind of depending on what kind of tree that you are pruning, but these are all kind of like the tips that we saw that will give you, first of all, the maximum amount of airflow within the tree and so that that tree gets the best amount of sunlight for it. And then the next thing on our checklist was getting any branches that were kind of like crisscrossing, whether that was something that was growing in towards the middle of the tree. We took out all of those, or something that was crisscrossing and touching even between the trees. In those cases, we kind of decided which branch we wanted more. So in some cases, most cases, we really like peaches more than we like apricots, so we let the peach tree do its thing and took branches off of the apricot that were in the way. But sometimes it did make more sense to leave the branch that was on the apricot and take the one from the peach, just because it would cause problems or it was growing towards the middle of either tree and stuff like that. So that was very much a case-by-case basis of which branch we took, but we wanted to make sure that in general, there weren't any branches that were crisscrossing and touching each other or growing towards the middle of the tree, because these are both stone fruit trees. Another thing that we noticed while pruning our trees, which might be a helpful tip for you, is really choosing carefully which tool you are going to use for which branch in which scenario. So when it came to smaller branches, we were really using the saw sometimes or the loppers, whichever one just kind of made more sense. With some branches, the loppers gave us a cleaner cut. For other ones, the loppers actually would crush a branch if it was like too big. And so we would move to the saw instead, just so that we could get that clean cut. So again, you are exposing less of the tree to damage and disease. And if you're anything like me when it comes to really pruning in general, but it can be really hard to take off some of the branches, especially if they are on the bigger side. Like we had this one massive branch that we took out that was, growing up the center of our peach tree. It's a gigantic branch, but we decided that it was time for it to go. And part of that is being good neighbors and keeping our stuff kind of contained on our side if our neighbors don't want it. But the other part of it is we noticed that that branch was so heavy that it might cause damage to the tree if it, just broke off on its own one year. And so we decided to just take that off. And those are the kinds of decisions that you will have to make. Is sometimes you have to take off a lot of material off of your trees. One thing that can make this just a little bit easier to do is, instead of thinking of like, oh, I'm taking off this huge part of this tree, or I'm losing parts of my tree, or losing parts of the fruit that I'm going to get, or the harvest that I'm going to get, really think about the fact that you're just redirecting the tree's energy. So if you're taking off like a big branch, or you end up pruning a lot, what that is you're actually preserving that energy for the tree, and it can take it into something else, like developing a stronger root system or growing better fruit. That is another reason why, it's good to actually thin the fruit out on fruit trees and stuff like that. And so that the tree is getting to put the energy that it has, instead of spreading it out all over the place and giving you small or just not very good tasting fruit. It gets to really concentrate its energy into bigger and sweeter fruit. Or it's just in general making the tree healthier in the long run. And so sometimes it is good to lose something, or it feels like losing something in the beginning of your tree's life, knowing that that's actually going to give you much better harvest and a healthier tree for years and years to come. So I hope that this look into how we prune our trees was helpful for you. If you have any questions, feel free to leave them in the comments below. And because I love creating a community where everyone gets to learn from each other, if you have any helpful tips or anything that you use on your fruit trees, whether that's a stone fruit tree, apple tree, anything like that, I would love for you to share it in the comments below so that everyone can benefit from the collective knowledge here. And if you are thinking about getting fruit trees, or you're growing fruit trees for the first time, I would love to hear about it. Thank you so much for joining me in my garden again today, and I will talk to you later. Bye, friends.